Okay. Good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm your pilot for today and I go by the name Lethabo Makgeta. Before we kick off, let us show our combined appreciation towards the people who made this event possible. That would be the Mintech Information and Communication team, our SHEC corporate team, and of course, a special thanks to the lady of the day. She's the head of corporate SHEC at Mintech. She's my boss. I have to say that to ensure that I get a good performance review when the time comes. But for today, she is the host of this event. And while I fondly refer to her as Sisi, you can all call her Miss Mpendulo Gininza, and she will welcome you just now. Over to you, Sisi.
Thank you, Lethabo. Welcome everyone to this event. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate Global Recycling Day. It's an important day, just like any other day, your birthday, Christmas, or Valentine's. It's a time that we take to be reminded and to stop and think about what the day means to you. And today it's about recycling and waste. We've come from an age where we saw waste as a problem, something that just comes up and pollutes our environment. But we've learned over the years that it can become a resource, and that's how we want to look at it as we go into the circular economy. And we want to leverage on the capabilities that are presented now in our age. Okay, so we want to start a conversation with all of you that are here from different areas, different workspaces. This is a multidisciplinary space. Start a conversation where we talk to each other, learn from each other, and assist each other to get to where we want to go to in terms of creating that economy that we want, where waste is treated as a resource. Thank you. Enjoy the day, and please participate and engage. Give us ideas. Let's share and let's progress together. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you again, Sisi. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. To ensure that we interact in real time and that you get an opportunity to find out more about a certain topic or even interact with our esteemed speakers, please use the raise hand or the chat function to ask your questions so that we don't disturb the speakers. And can I also request that you all mute yourselves until you want to speak? I'll tell you a little bit about the event. Our event is grouped into 3 sessions, and there's a few speakers in each session. We'll start with background and recycling. So in that session, our speakers will educate us on recycling and all the actions and processes associated with it, the challenges and opportunities in recycling, the challenges and opportunities in waste management as a whole, and the impact that the energy and material we use and release to the environment have on the actual environment. I don't know about you, but at some point I thought riding my bike twice around the hood is recycling. But today we're going to have those myths dispersed. And to kick off the session, let me tell you about Mintech and how we manage our waste and how we have implemented the not so new legislation and basically how recycling happens around here. So back in 2008, Mintech was certified to ISO 14001, and that's the Environmental Management System Standard. So when the Waste Act was promulgated, and we have a speaker in our midst who will unpack when and how the legislation came into place. So I'm not going to talk about that. But Mintech had already established a SHEC office, and the organization had an estranged SHEC policy, which included radiation protection. And that policy promoted prevention of environmental pollution. Waste generated on site is managed according to the management procedures that we have. Isn't it that I already indicated that we were ISO 14000 certified? So, and we all know that during those times, the ISO standards were big time on procedures. So we had procedures, Mintech had procedures, and these procedures focused on the safe disposal of waste to prevent human health effects and environmental pollution. So general and hazardous waste would be separated and disposed of in different landfill sites. And it was a bit easier then for Mintech to comply with the Waste Act and the then Department of Water and Forestry, which was DWAF at the time. There are minimum requirements for handling, classification, and disposal of hazardous waste, and the minimum requirements for disposal of waste to the landfill. So waste needed to be classified. And because of that, the waste streams were identified. We are lucky at Mintech, we have our own laboratories, we have our own practical experience. So using tests and practical experience and literature on hazardous material, the divisions in Mintech were able to classify our own waste, applying, of course, the SANS 10234, and therefore our waste was classified as either general or as hazardous waste. Now, Mintech, because it provides R&D expertise, we conduct a range of activities from which different types of waste are generated, some of which are sent to the landfills for disposal and some is recycled. So we have pickup points distributed throughout the site, and that is where our waste management company comes to pick up the waste from site. Already our waste is separated. So the waste management company issues a waste manifest document, which records proof of safe disposal of waste. And we'll continue talking about how Mintech handles its waste as we continue with the webinar. So this is working. After talking so long about waste, I have already dumped the idea of throwing the garbage in my neighbor's backyard. It was a treacherous idea to begin with. So to tell us now about the challenges and opportunities in waste management and what we should expect in the future is a lady who works in a highly male dominated industry. Excuse me. This young lady has found a way to break the glass ceiling. She's making strides in educating her customers on the benefits of streamlined and accurate practice for the management of waste. She's a qualified paralegal who aims to instill knowledge about the waste industry and the importance of compliance to legislation pertaining to the environment. She is currently in her third year as a law student, and she aspires to specialize in environmental law. Armed with this qualification and with her experience in waste management field, she will better enhance her knowledge of the field and keep abreast of the trends and ever-changing methodologies of ensuring waste management is at the forefront of future environmental sustainability. She's a proactive and highly motivated individual who's always willing to roll up her sleeves and provide customers with the highest level of service, representing the company that helps Mintech and similar institution to safely manage their waste. I'll introduce you to Ms. Rethabile Rampai. Over to you, Rethabile. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Letabo, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. This is such a great platform. I'm so happy to be a part of this. So from a waste management perspective, let's start with the challenges. So obviously we know that the landfills are filling up, we're running out of space in the landfills, and we need to be innovative in how we deal with waste. And we need to find ways to streamline the process of collecting waste, to streamline the process of actually disposing of waste, and try to reduce the volumes that go to landfill. Obviously, the main goal is to get to zero waste to landfill altogether. And how we can do that is we start with the recycling process. So I'm going to start with just highlights on the hierarchy of how to deal with waste, and then I'll just take it from there. So on the hierarchy of waste, you've got prevention, which is the most important one. Then you've got the reduction, and then we reuse, we recycle, which is the bell of the ball. This is why we're all here today. And then we've also got the disposal process, which is right at the end. So with regards to that, we are getting into a space where we're having to look at what is the best way to manage your waste and to make all companies and everyone that is a generator of waste legally compliant with the current legislation. For example, I'll use hazardous waste. with most liquid hazardous waste, we're not allowed to send it to landfill anymore. So obviously we need to come up with treatment methods as to what is the best way to take your hazardous waste and actually make it, to innovate it and make it more sustainable for the environment. And how we do that then is we come up with treatment methods for that on our side. So we would take the waste itself, and then we would find out exactly what are the concentrates of the waste, what does it contain, and what is the best way to treat the waste. And then once we've treated it, we solidify it, and then we then put it in the landfill, because then we are remaining compliant. And then from a recycling perspective, it's very important to segregate waste, because most people are not aware of the fact that waste can be contaminated and unrecyclable. Some people don't even understand that you can have a piece of paper, for example, have a bit of oil on it, and then you just assume that it's still general waste. It's not. It's contaminated, and therefore it needs to be treated completely different, because now it's got a high calorific value and it becomes what is called a hydrocarbon. So those are some of the things that I try and instill in my clients and all my customers, to understand that it's not just something you're throwing in a dustbin, or you don't just dig a hole and forget about the waste. There needs to be certain procedures that are followed to ensure that this is treated in the best way possible and it is environmentally sustainable. So we do have a plan on how to get to zero waste to landfill. Obviously, this process is not going to happen overnight, unfortunately, but we do need to get to a place where we actually identify the problems and then we find the best solution for it. Because once we found the solution, we can actually get to a place where waste becomes financially sustainable, in a sense that it creates both an income and actual jobs for people in this sector. So what we do with from our perspective at Averta is, on our sites, we actually do a site assessment. We understand what exactly are the streams that are being disposed of, and then we then assess that, okay, what is actually required then to get the waste managed appropriately. So what we'll do then is we'll place a sorter on site to actually manage which streams go where, and then we collect each waste stream accordingly. And then what happens then is we also give our customers a rebate on the waste. So now we're getting to a place where your recyclables are actually worth money. And the great thing about having the sorters on site, having the rebates, is that then actually pays itself. It pays itself because from the rebates, you're able to get credits from that. You're able to create more jobs for people that are looking to better themselves, to improve their lives. And also from a recycling perspective, it helps because actually 1 ton of paper takes about 3 cubic meters of space in a landfill. So you can just imagine, if we're collecting 6 tons of paper on a monthly basis, you are saving the landfill space. You are actually reducing your carbon footprint on the planet as well. So I think it's very important to have recycling initiatives. I think it's very important to encourage recycling because it's not only environmentally sustainable, but I mean, there are so many future prospects in recycling that have not even been tapped into. Because even from a hazardous waste perspective, we're getting to a place where we are now blending our waste, and then we are getting to a place where we're now able to, at the end of it, have a specific product that was produced from your waste that we can resell. So I hope I've given you guys some insight with regards to how we deal with our waste and what we need from a waste management perspective. And I think from the challenges perspective is that a lot of people are so ignorant, sorry to say, about waste. A lot of people don't understand that there is, they're so uneducated on like how important it is to manage your waste adequately, to ensure that you have processes and procedures in place that are keeping you legally compliant, especially with your ISO standards that you have as well from an environmental perspective. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is that people are like, this is my rubbish, take it away. But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, because if there is medical waste that is mixed in, for example, with your general waste, it's already going to be a completely different treatment method. If you've got little bits of oil in your waste, it's going to have a completely different treatment method. So that's some of the challenges that we face, as well as that there's a lot of ignorance in terms of how is waste dealt with and why recycling is so important and what it does for the planet as well. So I hope that I have clarified and I have given you guys a bit more insight as to what we deal with from a waste management perspective. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Retabile. Bonginko Sidladla agrees on the chat. He says, yes, you have given a broad view on waste. So yeah, thank you very much for that. My 5-year-old started grade R this year. I'm so thankful. But I realized that he's becoming foul-mouthed. You know, he said to me the other day, Mom, garbage collectors are rubbish drivers, aren't they? I lost it. I even thought of taking him out of the school. But maybe I need to take my mind out of the gutter. I mean, he's 5, so what he meant should have been very clear to me. I'll introduce you to our next speaker, our very own sustainable development researcher, who is based at the Mineral Economics and Strategy Unit, we call it MESU, here at Mintech. He holds an MSc in Applied Sciences with orientation in environmental technology from the University of Pretoria. With more than 10 years of experience, he carries out applied research, he develops proposals, and he provides technical and strategic assistance in a multidisciplinary field of sustainable development, resource efficiency, dealing with water and energy, mineral economics, environmental management field, which includes, but is not limited to, environmental scoping, impact assessment studies, environmental management plans, as well as the provision of environmental management solutions and mitigating measures. In the water sector, he is currently a member of Reference Committee of Water Footprint Projects at the Water Research Commission in South Africa. And he has done work with the commission, which includes environmental life cycle assessment, which is something he's going to talk more about today. This he did at the Roslyn Industrial Area as a case study. He also worked with the Commission on the use of LCA, the Environmental Life Cycle Assessment, to evaluate sustainability of emerging industries. So this he undertook at the biodiesel production in Mpumalanga. He conducts water and carbon footprint for Mintech on a yearly basis to report on Mintech's overall resource efficiency and impacts on natural environment. Ladies and gentlemen, Violeza Kiler Monziel Landu. Over to you, Landu. I'm going to share your screen now. I have your PowerPoint on my side. So yes, you can continue now, Mr.
Okay,
Landu.
thanks Letabo for the introduction. Much appreciated. Without a delay, I'm going to talk to you about the circular economy and life cycle perspective. Most of you have spoken about the waste. Now, the process of generating that waste from cradle to grave, this is what we call, life cycle assessment. What is life cycle assessment? Which is, gives you the word of life cycle perspective. Life cycle assessment, it's a cradle to grave analysis technique that allows you to assess the environmental impact associated with all the stages of life cycle of a product. Can be a product, can be, a system, can be a service. Now, when you assess the environmental impact from cradle to grave of that particular product, system, or service, this is what we call life cycle assessment. So as you can see here, we give you the life cycle assessment framework. What is included in the life cycle assessment? You have your goal and scope. You have to do your inventory analysis. You have to do what we call the impact analysis. And overall, you have to do the interpretation. What is, what you have gained out of the processes, you now go and interpret your result. And what is the use, the direct application of lifecycle assessment? It allows you to do the strategic planning, meaning, your decision making, whereby where you know already what is the waste that you have generated is all about. You can, do the decision making. You can come up with a policy from the government side. You can know how to market your products, and you can know from there how to develop your product. How the lifecycle assessment is conducted? You start with your goal and scope. Why are you conducting that particular lifecycle assessment for that particular product or a system? And how do you prepare your data collection method? How do you collect your data? How do you validate your data? How do you relate your data to your unit process? And how do you come up with a functional unit of that particular lifecycle assessment of a product or system or services? And you aggregate your data and refine the system boundary. You always, when you do a lifecycle assessment, you need to know how far you go within that process. You define the stages that need to be included in your lifecycle assessment that you're about to conduct. You don't just consider the whole process. No. You need to go step by step. For that, you define your lifecycle boundary. And then all the lifecycle assessment principles are being found in ISO standard. So if you want to know how to conduct lifecycle assessment, it's easy. You go to consult your ISO standard. The ISO 14040, it gives you the lifecycle framework. Which phase do you need to consider when you conduct your lifecycle assessment? In ISO 14041, you know how to define you get to know how to define your goal and scope definition and inventory analysis. In ISO 14042, it's basically your impact assessment that you do. And the ISO 14043, it gives you how to do interpretation. And ISO 14044, it gives you the requirements and the guideline how to conclude, how to come up with sensitivity analysis. Now, what is a lifecycle process? I can give you an example of the South African production of electricity. We start with coal. Coal is your raw material. Okay, you mine it, you produce, meaning where you now burn it, you come up with your electricity. And then from the electricity, you transport it to different users around the country. Can be the industrial sectors around the country, and can be, the home-based users. Now, at the end, you generate what we call the CO2, which is your waste. It's urban waste. The urban waste that you generate when you produce the electricity, it's what we call the greenhouse gas. That is a very important pollutant to that contribute to climate change. Now, in each and every phase, you use the energy, you use and water, upstream. And downstream, you generate waste for each and every part until you dispose your waste. And all the stages make together what we call lifecycle assessment process. Now, when you calculate the environmental burdens, for each and every stage of lifecycle assessment, lifecycle process, you do what we call the lifecycle assessment, environmental assessment. Now, we can also get to know the input in terms of cost for each and every stage of lifecycle process. You do what we call the economic assessment of your process. You can also get to know the social impact of each and every stage involved in the generation of your electricity. You do what we call the social lifecycle assessment. Now, all the 3 blocks, which is your social life cycle assessment, your environmental life cycle assessment, your economic life cycle assessment, which is your life cycle costing, makes the sustainability of the life cycle assessment process. And then you call it life cycle thinking. You call it life cycle perspective. You call it life cycle initiative. Now you have an overall view of the process that you generate. How much waste does it generate? How much costs can it be? And what are the impacts that can it generate into the society? Okay. And then how do you conduct a life cycle assessment? You come up with a table. The table where you have your energy input, you have your material input, you have your water input. You collect the data in each and every stage of your life cycle process. And then you do all the calculation until you get your waste at the end. Now, when you generate your waste at the end, in a closed loop process, meaning you cannot pollute the environment. You cannot leave that waste to go into the natural environment. No, you reprocess it, you recycle it, and you send it back to your process. This is what we call a circular economy, meaning you generate a value out of that waste. You don't release it into the environment in order to pollute your environment. No. You get the value of that waste. It's all about the environmental, the circular economy. And after that, I wanted also to tell you about the consumer behavior. The consumer behavior, when it comes to life cycle perspective, I can give you the example of the electricity. Because our electricity in the country is generated out of coal, and at the end, it generates the CO2, we have to use efficiently our electricity. Because we know that the source of it is coal. When we burn our coal, we generate the CO2, which is a greenhouse gas. The advice is, as a consumer, we have to use optimally, we have to use efficiently our electricity, meaning we have to come up with an electricity saving mechanism. As you know, can be energy efficiency on industrial stage, can be energy efficiency strategy for the home-based owners. Okay, now we have your consumer behaving, you have your circular economy where you try to get the value out of that waste. You have different technology that can treat that CO2. Instead of that CO2 being released into the environment, you treat it because you know already the process of generating that particular waste from cradle to grave. Now you get the CO2, you treat it, instead of being released into the environment, you treat it in order to get the value out of it. When it comes to water pollution, you treat that particular water, you eliminate as much pollutant as possible, you send it back into the process for reuse. I can give you an example of here at Mintech. We use water. The water, at the end of our process, the water is polluted, but we reprocess that particular water. We recycle it, and then we send it back into our processes, whereby we can use the very same water in our labs instead of throwing it into the environment. That's a risk, okay? Now, when it comes to the electricity, we make sure that we use our electricity efficiently because we are not generating the CO2, but the process of buying that electricity, where the electricity is being generated, it generates the CO2. So all these processes we have now, our behavior as a consumer of that particular electricity, as a consumer of water, and the circular economy where now we try to get the value of that waste. It means we can recycle it and reuse it, or we can recycle it and sell it to a potential user. So we have now your life cycle perspective, you have your circular economy, and we have what we call the life cycle thinking in all our processes that we conduct in Mintech, from cradle to grave. We make sure we have a life cycle thinking in our mind that as I start from A, when I reach to Z, this is the waste that I get. And the waste that I get, I have to make sure that I don't release it into the nature in order to pollute the nature, but instead, I get the value out of it, meaning I'll recycle it for reuse. I'll recycle it or sell it outside to a potential consumer. Now, that particular consumer, we need to make sure that we use that particular product efficiently in order to minimize our waste, the generation of that particular waste. I think I can stop at this stage because I'm sure you can now get to understand what is your circular economy, where you create a value out of your waste, what is your life cycle assessment, where now you have to conduct your environmental burden, calculate the environmental burden from cradle to grave. And the recycling is the waste that you get at the end. You recycle it or for reuse, or you recycle it, to sell it out there for potential people that can use it. It's all about the resource efficiency. It's all about the resource savings in our environment. Thank you. Hi, Letabo.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Landu. This unmute and mute function, I forget. Thank you so much, Mr. Landu. That was very informative. What we have now is a few minutes to look at questions. If there's anybody who's raised their hands, anybody who has questions about Mr. Landu's presentation, the life cycle assessment, or Ms. Retabile Rampai's presentation about the recycling and what Averda does, this is the time you can ask those questions, because we are at the end of our first session. So just before we move into the next session, can we look at those questions? Elizabeth, can you just look, please, if we have hands that are raised? I see Bonyinko Sidlama has his hand raised, and also look at the questions on the chat function if we have. We'll give over now to Bonyinkosi. Bonyinkosi, you can talk now. Please unmute yourself. Okay, Bonginkosi said doesn't have mute or unmute tab on the screen. Let me see if there's anything I can do from my side about that. Okay. No, I don't. If you can please pose your question on the chat. Yes, please. Yeah, he's already looked at that option. Please pose the question on the chat function. Yes, Bonginkosi. Elizabeth will read it out for us. I'm not sure if we. Okay, Takani Mabunda says, thank you, Landu, for informative presentation. So thank you, Mr. Landu. While Bonginkosi is writing, can we maybe move forward to save time, and we'll come back to Bonginkosi's question. Elizabeth, you let me know when you see the question. Let's just move over then to legal and compliance. That is the start of our second session. We are all aware that South Africa is getting close to drowning in its own waste. That you can hear on the radios, you can hear anywhere you go, people talk about it. Sessions like these, webinars like these, you will get that kind of information. So it is scary. But to drastically alter our wasteful habits and to encourage a circular economy that Mr. Landu was talking about, where materials are reused over and over again, the government late in the past year gazetted radical new legislation that will have a big impact on businesses and consumers. So this next session is about educating us on exactly that. And without further ado, I'm calling upon a member of the South African Society for Quality who holds a BTech degree in quality, a BSc in environmental management, the chemistry stream, a BSc honors in technology management, and a master's degree in management sciences, business administration. She has also completed a management development program pertaining to standards in organizations. She joined the South African Bureau of Standards in December 2013, and she's currently working as a specialist material developer on the SHEC management systems. Her overall role includes the developing, training, facilitation, auditing, and the maintenance of the SHEC management system in SAPS. In addition, she's responsible for the facilitation of product certification acquisition for small, medium, and micro enterprises, assisting them with the process for obtaining the SAPS mark, the mark bearing certification, and providing them with awareness on quality and compliance. Before she joined the SAPS, though, she held the portfolios of quality practitioner and SHEC manager at the CSIR, in which roles she provided thought leadership in health and safety, quality, environment management system, and she was also responsible for driving the quality strategy as a quality practitioner. But prior to working at the CSIR, she worked at Engine Petroleum in the laboratory and quality department. She has working knowledge and experience of more than 15 years in the SHEC industry. Her areas of expertise include the implementation, the maintenance, the facilitation training, auditing of SHEC and laboratory management systems. Her master's degree covered the impact of quality standards on business excellence, and she has also written a paper on the economic impact of the standards. I'm not sure what she hasn't done yet, but her name is Pindile Chili, and Pindile, you may address us.
Thank you so much, Lethabo. I will try and maneuver myself, technology and age, I'm from old school, so I'm trying to maneuver myself. I can still see what the previous presentation from Mr. Landu. Can you please unshare so that I share my screen? Thank you so much, sir. I'm trying to share my presentation. Oh, okay. Please let me know if you can see the table.
Yes, I will. I haven't seen it. Anybody else sees a different screen than mine?
Sure. Okay. I'll try and don't disappoint the audience. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to the host to be part of this conference. As you have already said, my name is Pindile. I'm from the Bureau of Standards. Retabile, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. You are not on slideshow yet. So if you click on slideshow.
Okay. How is it now?
It's still showing the same way. You need to go to slideshow and then start from beginning. Yes, that's it.
Perfect. Oh, okay, it's fine. Okay, before I continue, before I proceed, colleagues, let me first make a disclaimer because I'm in between. Actually, I've opened 3 devices, including this laptop. So the network keeps dropping. So I will just at some point switch off my video. If my apologies for that. Let me carry on to the next slide. I'm sure everyone who's sitting here can see what is happening on this scene, especially on behalf of people from the Gauteng. I'm sure they are used to such scenarios almost every day of their lives. Nonetheless, the reason for why I've put this scene is for you to understand something. The bottom line is, imagine a world without standards. So what would happen without standards? So standards, in its actual sense, they are there to actually try and maintain order, consistency, and conformity. I can imagine a world without standards where there will be a lot of pollution. I can visualize an environment, an unhealthy environment caused by high levels of quality, air quality levels, dangerous air quality levels, your spillages entering our stormwaters, etc., etc. Even the landfill sites probably established next to our neighborhood. I believe everyone wouldn't want that scenario happening in their areas. Sorry about that. Colleagues, it is no secret that manufacturers remain the major contributors to pollution, and therefore they should adopt standards like your ISO 14001. That standard provides them with guidelines for an environmental management system. It assists businesses in fulfillment of their compliance obligations and enhances environmental performance. It equally provides businesses with a framework to protect the environment and respond to changing environmental conditions in balance with socio-economic needs. From the economic viewpoint or perspective, issues of sustainability are becoming more and more pronounced. As such, companies are beginning to be more comfortable and they entrust doing businesses with those who carry out their business processes in a sustainable manner. For example, if two SMMEs were to knock on the door, one is using a recyclable packaging and the other is using a natural packaging, one can tell immediately what would happen eventually. We may not necessarily be there right now. However, it seems like that where we are going to such an extent that if you don't prepare for that right now, you will find yourself being out of business in the foreseeable future. Some businesses would even go to an extent of requesting for certificates before they can engage their services, as they believe that they should be working with people who are responsible and working in a sustainable manner. Having said that, it is clear that when you have a certified environmental management system, it would assist in reducing or eliminating technical barriers to trade. That is very important and gives you a better competitive advantage by virtue of organization, whether small or big or large, of having ISO 14001, which is an international standard. It is recognized globally and therefore plays an important role in the business environment and society in general in performance, in promoting consistency, conformity, and compliance. Sorry, I'm trying to move on to this. Okay, there are three major concepts that underpin your ISO 14001. The input, process, output concept that underpinned ISO 14001, which is very linked to your PDCA cycle. Those who are quality practitioners would know what I mean by PDCA cycle. Your P stands for your planning, your D stands for your doing, your C stands for your checking, and your A stands for your acting. So basically what it means is this is a systematic approach to an environmental management system. Therefore, in order to put these concepts into context, I would use an example which is more relevant, I think, in this case, of like turning the recyclables into the recycled content products. So what ISO 14001 standard says? It says that it will set guidelines for businesses in the planning stage, which is your P of the cycle, where the inputs considered during the collection of the recyclable remain critical. What am I trying to say here is the inputs like the credibility of the recyclable collector. Colleagues, you need to know as a recyclable collector, you need to be accredited to have necessary permits for you to be able to conduct recyclables. Necessary methods that you need to follow, the SOPs, your standard operating procedures to be followed, and the techniques used for the collection of the recyclables should comply with the relevant statutory and regulatory requirements. Subsequent to that, subsequent to planning is the doing stage, whereby what it means is it's where the process of transforming the inputs into desired output takes place. So the standard, your ISO 14001 standard, has led businesses to adopt a systematic approach to environmental management system through the implementation of a system which aims at contributing to sustainability. The standard constantly reminds you that processes shall be streamlined such that they do not compromise environmental obligations, which is very important. Also, from the responsibility point of view, this makes sense as you would not want your legacy saying that you contributed to more deterioration than you could have done as a business. Hence, the standard reiterates the importance of the operational planning and control as a mandatory requirement. ISO 14001 also explicitly guides you to monitor and measure processes used every day against the environmental objectives and environmental policy of an organization, such that a desired output achieves its environmental goals through consistent reviewing, evaluation, and improvement. This is part of your doing, checking, and acting in the cycle. And the cycle will go back over and over again to ensure a continuous improvement. Furthermore, this ISO standard serves as an iteration to risk-based thinking. What does that mean? It means that businesses, whether small or large, in order for them to manage their product realization processes in a sustainable and acceptable manner, they shall determine those environmental aspects and their impacts thereof, as well as ensure that control measures are put in place to mitigate. Lastly, as a recommendation for those in the manufacturing of plastics, I would like to recommend that there is a standard called ISO 15270 that can be relevant and can align with your ISO 14001 environmental management system standard. That standard is more like it explores different options for the recovery of sources, because even though the production of recyclable is less aggressive than the production of your virgin or your raw inputs, but still you need to ensure that you do things right the first time and meet the relevant quality and environmental management system. From my presentation, colleagues, it is affirmed that the use of your ISO 14001 standard should be encouraged as we move towards building a secondary resources economy. Lastly, but not least, in closing, I would like to encourage all businesses, small or large, to really consider implementing an environmental management system that is guided by ISO 14001 requirements. You can purchase the standard online at www.sabsstandardsales.co.za. My last thought is obviously, in an ideal situation, everyone would like to be in this scenario. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pindile Chili, everyone, with a very nice presentation. Siyabonga sis. Elizabeth, could you kindly look at the questions? I see Ritabile has also responded to one of the questions. So while going through the questions, please also read the response from Ritabile. And Mr. Lando, I don't know if you want to, there's a question posed to you. I don't know if you want to answer it online or if you're going to also type in, but if you can answer online, that is okay. Thank you, Bonginkosi, for participating as well. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Can I start with a comment from Bonginkosi? He said that the Retabile's presentation was comprehensive, and this needs to be taken broadly also into rural and township areas. He's at the TVET college, and the issue of waste training and skills development is perceived as university competency. How can the training on waste management, waste economy, or circular economy be taken to TVET colleges? And he's posing a question that, will this be considered, or will you consider opening up business incubation to this effect? I'll move on to The next, also from Bongosi, there's a macroeconomic framework in Limpopo called the Limpopo Development Plan, which have identified levers which they termed high growth catalytic projects, and green economy is one of those projects. How can the province work with you to ensure that waste to production skills can be imparted to the rural and township societies? Can I go through them, or are we going to give an opportunity for the response, or can I read them all?
No, just continue, Liz, and read them.
Okay. I'm not sure who commented that he can't or she can't imagine a world without standards. But from Bongosi again, and this is to Landu now, I heard that there is a regulation that has been recently promulgated called the Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR in brackets. How much of an effect does that have on LCA?
Okay.
And then this is from Mpendulo.
No, you can skip
That one.
It's not
Okay.
questions, yeah. Okay. So you can read the response from Retabile. I think it answers one of the questions Bonginkosi has posed.
Let me just go there now. That's from Retabile. This is a rather broad question. Our South African footprint has yet to engage directly with the province of Limpopo. We do, however, have a platform and department that is solely dedicated to waste, innovation, and sustainability. I'm certain would be able to open the conversation with the respective department heads and come up with a solution that would allow us the platform to extend this knowledge to those areas.
There's also another response, Liz, that Retabile has given. I'm not sure if you're not able to find it. She's responded to the first question.
Was it before this one?
Yes, please look for that.
I think I can't see it.
Okay, it's fine. I'm finding it. Let me read it from the site. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, no problem.
She says, hi, Bonginkosi. Training is provided by the Institute of Waste Management in Southern Africa. Because of the diversity of the learning outcomes, my suggestion is that MINTEC involves the Institute in training initiatives. All training is accredited by an authorized body. We can provide details of the Institute and further discuss the facilitation and future implementation thereof. Thank you, Retabile, for those responses. And Bonginkosi, thank you very much for participating. Mr. Landu, are you going to be able to respond now to the question from Bonginkosi about the extended producer responsibility? You can type that in, and I'm sure Bonginkosi will have access to that. I'm not sure how Zoom works. But if you want to answer live, it's fine. If you want to type, you can tell us now so we can continue.
No, I'll type it now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Landu. We'll come back to that. Thank you, everyone. We'll continue with our program. I heard that a glue company claimed that it was environmentally friendly, but it was found to be dumping waste into the local river. So their PR team, needless to say, is in a sticky situation. MINTEC has ensured that it never finds itself in those kind of situations. And as such, they have a SHEC legal compliance officer who has been ensuring that we comply with health and safety and environmental, legal, and other requirements for the past 3 years. She worked at High Voltage Technology for 5 years before she came to MINTEC as a SHE officer there, where her duties included ensuring compliance to SHE legislation, to standard, to policies and procedures. She studied the National Diploma in Safety Management at the Vaal University of Technology and furthered her studies at UNISA, where she obtained a BTech in Safety Management. She is of a view that implementing a management system for SHEC is a strategic decision that any organization can use to support its sustainability initiatives and to increase profitability. while ensuring that its people are safer and healthier, at the same time that the environment is protected from pollution and degradation. If anyone knows where the unwritten rules are, ladies and gentlemen, it is my dearest friend, Miss Winnie Mukhale. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Litabo, for introducing me. I just shared my screen. I hope you can see it. Can you see it, Litabo?
Yes, I can see it, Winnie, and I'm sure everybody else can.
Thank you so much, my friend, for introducing me. So today I'm just going to give you guys an overview of the South African waste management legislation. So recycling has been taking place in South Africa since the 1970s. There was a company by the name of Steelrec, which supported the collection and recycling of used beverage cans in South Africa. And there was waste sorting facilities in major urban areas in Johannesburg and Pretoria in the 1970s. A paper recovery rate of 23% of South Africa was reported in 1973. However, there was no legislation to support these initiatives. Government's intention with regard to driving greater waste recycling, they published a white paper on integrated pollution and waste management in 2000, and the first national waste management strategy in 1999. In 2003, they published the Procurement Declaration aimed at mapping South Africa's transition towards zero waste, which led up to the banning of single-use and lightweight plastic bags, and implemented a bag tax aimed at minimizing the volume of plastic bags littering. However, these targets were not legislated, which is a huge problem. So now, in order for South Africa to regulate waste management activity, a number of policies and legislations were written and published. In 1989, the Environmental Conservation Act as amended was published, which outlined the requirements for the management of waste and provide the first legal definition of waste. But it was largely focused on the permitting, controlling, and management of waste disposal sites. In 1998, National Waste Management Act, which provides for the cooperative environmental governments by establishing principles for decision-making on matters affecting the environment, was published. Then in 1999, the first waste management strategy and white paper on integrated pollution and waste management were published. In 2008, the National Environment Waste Act was promulgated. The Act reformed the law regulating waste in order to protect the health and the environment by providing reasonable measures for the prevention and pollution and ecological degradation. The Act was followed by a number of regulations which indicate the management of waste tires and domestic waste, list of waste management activities that are detrimental to the environment. In 2013, a number of norms and standards were published with provide guideline to waste assessment and classification, storage of waste, disposal of waste to landfill, which prohibits and restricts some waste streams such as reusable, recoverable, and recyclable used lubricating mineral oils, reusable, recoverable, and recyclable use of spent solvent, garden waste, waste tires, liquid waste, so on, to be disposed and at a landfill. So in 2016, a national pricing strategy for waste management was published, which contains guiding methodologies for setting of waste management charges aimed at funding the reuse, recycling, or recovery of waste. So now in 2020, the National Pricing Strategy for Waste Management was published, which aims to provide basis and guiding methodology for setting of waste management charges in South Africa. This is through providing an enabling environment for waste recycling and contributing to the recycling economy in South Africa through recovery, reuse, and recycling of waste. Some of the focus of the strategy includes promoting approaches to the design and product of packaging that reduce waste or encourage reuse, repair, and preparation for recycling, support markets for source separation recyclables. Invest in the economies associated with transporting of recyclables to waste processing facilities. Like Boginkosi already mentioned, so in last year in November, the extended producer responsibility regulations were published. So the purpose of the notice is to require the producers of products or class of producers to set up processes and invest resources to implement the extended producer responsibility measures linked to collection of their product in the post-consumer stage, reuse, recycling, recovery, and disposal of their product in the post-consumer stage. The targets for each identified waste stream for the products as contained in Annex 1 to this notice apply for the period of 5 years from the date of the implementation. So the date of the implementation is from the 5th of May this year, 2021, of the extended producer responsibility scheme. So here are some of the targets that are set in the notice. So for class packaging, so the producers have to make sure that by year 1, they collect about 46.4% of their packaging, and then they recycle 46% of that packaging. And in year 5, they have to collect about 65.4%, and then they have to recycle 65.4%. So for metal packaging, their targets are a bit higher. So the year 1, they have to collect 77.7 and then recycle 77.7% of their packaging and so on. So South African government is really trying to ensure that we are taking zero waste to landfill. There is so much to do with waste, like Ratabile has already explained. So yes, that will be all from myself. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Winnie Mohale, everyone. Elizabeth will keep checking on the chat if there are questions or comments. And let us know, please, Liz, if there's anything you need to read out. Ms. Winnie Mohale has checked if this webinar complies with regulations. I'm sure she did that before we started, so we're all safe. Next up, to educate us on...
There is
yes,
the response from Landu.
Okay. Can you please read that out?
To Bongenkosi, Landu said that the regulator would like to see every waste producer have a life cycle thinking from the initial stage of the process and being mindful and responsible about input and output of the process. This is required for prevention, if not avoidance. And there's this comment to thank Winnie after that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Okay, moving to the next speaker to educate us on compliance evaluation. This is one of our esteemed speakers who has previously worked as an environmental manager within the Generation Clean Technology Department of Eskom Holdings, and also as a senior advisor within the construction department of the same organization. As a senior advisor, he provided environmental management services to newly constructed and World Bank funded projects such as the Medupi Power Station, the Kusile Power Station, and Ingula Power Station. He has experience in environmental performance standards of the International Finance Corporation. He's also worked as an environmental project manager for Bembani Group and Strategic Environmental Focus, which are both environmental consulting firms that are based in the province of Gauteng. He has managed a wide variety of sustainability, waste management, water management, and environmental management projects within the energy, mining, agriculture, waste management, and infrastructure sector in the country. He has provided environmental services to companies such as Anglo Kumba Ore, Anglo Platinum, NL Energy, Shell, and several government departments. He's also worked as a monitoring and evaluation research associate for Phytotrade Africa, a natural products trade association with members across 7 Southern African countries. He is an environmental, social, and governance specialist with 15 years experience. He's currently based in Johannesburg. He holds Doctor of Business Leadership degree from the Graduate School of Business Leadership of the University of South Africa and specializes in corporate environmental sustainability. He also holds a Master of Science degree in environmental sciences from the University of the Witwatersrand and also a Bachelor of Environmental Science degree honors in forestry from Pindura University of Science Education in Zimbabwe. Pamsoro Pako, Dr. Gabriel Ngorima.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Just to ask, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, and I saw you did share your slide.
Yes. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be participating in this webinar on a subject that I'm very much interested in, waste management. Interested because as a researcher, there's a lot of opportunities for learning because waste management is an evolving field in the world and also particularly in South Africa, as we have seen that there's been a lot of legislative changes that have happened as presented by the previous speakers. But my presentation is focusing on just a small element of this waste management, which is compliance evaluation. And it is quite interesting because it is one of the tools that is available for us as environmental practitioners and the industry at large to be able to assess in the long term if we are making any progress in terms of waste management. So I will be trying to discuss a little bit on the sources of compliance evaluation, and this is particular to South Africa, and also the challenges and maybe the opportunities that comes from those challenges, and then just make a conclusion based on what I perceive to be the trends from the past, the present, and into the future. So there's been evolution, and the evolution has been associated with, firstly, that waste management predates the primary legislation of environmental management and the waste management that Winnie was explaining to us earlier. And so it evolved by itself in the industry, even without very clear legislation to it. So that's the evolution that has happened. And various industry players were also measuring themselves in terms of their performance within the waste management fraternity. But it is becoming more and more interesting as the industry becomes more aware of the benefits of waste management as we move towards the green economy, or as we actually within the green economy, as it were. There are, in my view, 3 sources of compliance evaluation for waste management in South Africa. The first is the legislative part of it, which has been explained earlier on by various presenters, where, for example, evaluation comes through the waste management control officers that are provided in the NEMWA Act, and also the ECO that are provided in the National Environmental Management Act, also the Environmental Management Inspectorates, the green scorpions that have been around for over 15 years now, which came with the National Environmental Management Act. It's all part of evaluation. I know some industry players are always looking at inspectors with a particular view, but the whole purpose of those environmental inspectors is a contribution in the part of the state to compliance evaluation on environment and also in terms of waste. Then, of course, ISO 14001, the auditing part of it, as we saw from Pindile's presentation from SABS, is part of the check element within the environmental management system. And we are proud here in South Africa because ISO 14001 is very much entrenched in industry. In fact, as we work in various sectors in the country, we realize that in most cases, actually the sources of compliance evaluation is underpinned on ISO 14001. And this is an industry practice that is quite relevant even in terms of compliance evaluation. So related to ISO 14001 is what I always want to call the best practice, which is what the industry is doing on a day-to-day basis, and hence there is benchmarking to it. So specifically, I want to start with the legislation. I'm not going to dwell a lot into the legislation and its link to environmental compliance or to waste compliance because that has been said already. But in general, you notice that from 2017 amendment of the EIA regulations, there's been a lot of emphasis in terms of audit reports that are required from EIA that would have been granted. This is quite a significant compliance issue that is coming at a broad level in terms of activities that are normally have to be authorized in terms of EIA regulations. And this is very interesting. And you notice that most RODs that are being issued, and RODs I'm talking about all NEMA related, which also extends to waste management, would have a clause that says records relating to compliance or non-compliance with the conditions of authorization must be kept in good order. So record keeping is a very significant part of compliance evaluation, both for self-assessment of your evaluation and also for external auditing. So I think as industry players, it is very critical that we look at record keeping as a very key part of compliance evaluation, and it's something that is becoming more and more important to the industry. And then ISO 14001, it defines the legal requirements that an organization has to comply with as part of compliance obligation. And this is critical because these are obligations that are actually embedded within ISO 14001, the 2005 standard that I've given as an example, which is critical in reinforcing compliance evaluation within the industry. Then, of course, we know that the Annexure A of the 2015 standard of ISO 14001 provides very important details that are critical for the industry always to look into, because there are certain mandatory requirements that will be subject to compliance evaluation in the long term. Then best practice. This is probably what interests me so much on this compliance evaluation for waste management, because in the process of waste management evolving, you will notice that there are benchmarking that is taking place. Even the audit reports that are available in the industry, there is no specific templates that are provided in legislation but it has become an evolution through best practice and the industry seeing what is best for us. And this is probably what is going to be the case in the medium to long term, because there are going to be new legislation, there's going to be new emphasis as the industry actually appreciates the waste management as a contribution to the green economy. There's going to be a growing interest and a growing improvement in how we evaluate our waste management. Because you notice that when one has to provide, for example, a business plan in relation to recycling or in relation to a carbon tax, for argument's sake, you will notice that the externally audited reports, which is evaluation, are going to be very critical in the short and medium term to be able to inform even development finance institutions to actually see, to say your business plan, does it relate to your performance as an organization in the past 5 years or 10 years? So I think, in my view, industry has to be aware that to be active participants in the green economy, to actually have benefits in terms of business opportunities that accrue from waste management, we need to be very watchful in making sure that our compliance evaluation actually meets industry best practice or meet the benchmarks that the industry has set itself. Then, just in conclusion, I would like to want to talk about the challenges. You find that most organizations struggle in terms of evaluations because there isn't so much skills available, or there's not so much available budgets within organizations to be able to provide evaluation, starting from self-evaluation or even external evaluations that are needed for purpose of demonstrating compliance to waste management. And then there's also cost to waste classification, because in most cases, the industry struggles to be able to demonstrate their commitments or meeting their commitments, because, for example, they are not able to classify their waste on a timeous basis in order to then confirm their achievements in terms of, for example, a reduction in waste, or in terms of their ability to recycle and to be able to make key decisions to know which waste is able to be recyclable at a particular time. So there is actually an opportunity within the industry for us to actually have more players in the industry, and hoping that it will actually reduce the cost of waste classification. And some of the evaluation methods will require actually scientific methods that involves drillings that are expensive. And in most cases, it is because it's some industry players actually sometimes having a monopoly into this space. But I think as we move in this waste management space, there is need for industries to have own capacity to be able to provide evaluation that can actually be accreditable. And so that when you provide such evidence as part of your evaluation, be it in terms of self or external audit, you'll be able to demonstrate with having an SAP stamp or accreditation from laboratory. So I think there is an opportunity for organizations, especially that are big, in order to invest more into methods to bring rigor and auditable methods of evaluating waste management. So you notice that there is no one size fits all when it comes to waste evaluation. It is a best practice driven evaluation system, but at the end of the day, we have to keep pace as we move with this process in order to be able to make a contribution to the growing to the green economy and to the development of the waste management in the country. So I think, in the interest of time, that's all that I could say. But I think I just want to make a call that you will not be able to make an impact when you are not able to measure adequately what you're actually doing. And there is a lot of successes out there, but they're not being measured accurately. And my call would be to say the industry must invest more in terms of evaluation within the organization and also externally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ngorima. I don't know about the rest of the attendees of this webinar, but I'm slowly feeling like changing career paths. This is very interesting. Next up is a gentleman who has worked in the chemical sector since 1982. He has extensive experience in the import, export, and distribution of industrial chemicals to almost every industry type in South Africa. After spending over 18 years on the road in sales and marketing development, he changed career paths to manage SHEC for the CHC Group, which was formerly known as Dow Chemicals Africa in 1999. He studied marketing management and business management through the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. He also has added a large number of SHEC-aligned courses since then, until recently when he was certificated as a lead auditor in the ISO 9001 and the ISO 45001 with ERCA, the certifying body from the UK. He now owns and manages a SHEC consultancy that focuses on the design, implementation, and auditing of management systems built around the proprietary profit method. Bruce consults with clients on health and safety compliance in conjunction with an occupational health services clinic. Many different business sectors are served in Gauteng from this. He also owns a franchise in water treatment systems for retail stores. He has experience that has covered process safety, transport system for handling hazardous chemicals, environmental management, SHEC system design and development, behavior-based safety, incident investigation, HIRA, and ISO systems for business. He's also serving on the SABS committees, TC 176 for the ISO 9000 and 9001 standards, plus TC 207 for ISO 14001 standards, and is a senior member of SAQI. He's held sales and marketing position, product management roles, middle management, and executive management as a chief operating officer with several local and multinational companies over the last 33 years. His range of experience can be broadly stated as ISO 9001, ISO 45001, auditing ISO management systems, SHEC systems development. I tell you, there isn't nothing that you will not find on Bruce Mills' CV. But ladies and gentlemen, to tell you all about that and the new ISO standard is going to talk about is Mr. John Bruce Mills. Over to you, Bruce. You are still on mute, Bruce. Please unmute yourself. Bruce, I'm not sure if I can unmute you. I'm going to send you an ask to unmute option.
Great.
There you go.
All right. Can you see my slides okay?
Okay.
I'm
I
sharing
am not seeing the slide.
All right. I am sharing a slide. I did click share my screen, but I wasn't sure if I was allowed to share my screen at that time. Are you able to hand sharing to me, please?
Pardon, Bruce, you want me to do what?
To hand sharing, the ability to share my screen. If you could hand that to me, please.
Okay, I'm going to try that. I don't know how to do that. Can you please direct me, Bruce? I know you are very good with this Zoom.
Yeah, on Zoom, if you are the presenter, you have the ability to hand the presenter role to any other person. And
would it work if I made you co-host at this point?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Yes, I have. So please try sharing again, Bruce.
All right, I'm just, okay. Hold on, I'm in Zoom. Let me just check it. I'm in the correct Zoom room. That's post attendee. That's incorrect. No, this is the right Zoom meeting. Hold on. Okay, this is, ladies and gentlemen, I am sitting here in Botswana. and connecting via a hotel connection. So I'm just trying to see on my screen, I have a post-attendee screen, which has nothing to do with what we're doing today. And then I have Zoom at the bottom of my screen. I am in the meeting, I know that. I'm just trying to
Yeah, and we
figure
can
out
see you in the meeting, Bruce.
You can see me. That's brilliant.
Yes.
Hang on, I'm going to this is hide video because all of a sudden I now don't have the full screen. So if I open my slides, my question is, am I sharing the slides? Are you not seeing that?
Not yet.
Oh, all right. Now, technically, how do I solve that problem? Because Zoom is not giving me anything that I can work with at this present moment. I'm just checking on this screen. Exit minimized video. Let's go to maximized. Right, now I've got my share screen back and I will share that screen. Share. There we are.
Looks like it's coming. Yes, definitely.
All right, fantastic.
It is
Sorry about
sharing.
that, ladies and gentlemen. The screen had been minimized here and I hadn't actually seen what we needed to go through. All right, fantastic. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my session. I'm going to be talking about a concept called sustainable procurement. Now, you might ask yourself, why would I talk on sustainable procurement if we are talking about recycling? And if you stay with me, you're going to get the idea of where I'm going with this fairly quickly. First things first, you've probably never heard of ISO 20400, and I hadn't heard of it until I was training this course in the end of 2019. And so I did a lot of research and work into it to understand how it works. And primarily, it starts with one premise. All ISO standards are frameworks to consolidate actions to get consistent results while managing risks. And I think each one of you can agree that that is exactly what we're talking about. We are looking at managing risks with our ISO standards. And 20,400 has an opening statement that says every organization has environmental, social, and economic impacts. So we are discussing elements of the environmental management systems that all of our organizations are involved with. We know that because we consume resources, we utilize energy, we process materials, we generate waste, those have both social and economic impacts as a result of the activities of the organization. Nobody disputes that, but we do need to make sure that we understand how we focus on the activities of the organization, understanding environmental, social, and economic, because these are part of the United Nations sustainable goals that we should all be looking at. Now, a statement from the standard says, sustainable procurement represents an opportunity to provide more value to the organization by improving productivity, assessing value, and performance of the organization. So we assess what we do and what results we're getting. And then I highlighted the enabling communication between purchasers, suppliers, and all stakeholders. Now, that is the key for me, is the enabling communication between purchasers and suppliers. So when we deal with our purchasing functions, we now are going to change the way we think about that. And we need to engage with our suppliers, and ultimately we are going to encourage innovation. Because when people are faced with change, very often they're reluctant to change. They're not open to change. We'd like to change that. And 20,400 now focuses around procurement and purchasing decisions. So I'm, in the 10 minutes I've got allocated to me, I'm just going to cover the 12 main principles. Just to go through those 12 principles to give you an idea of how this standard was built, how it is set together. You will see as we go along that it integrates into 14,000, the environmental management standards. It also integrates into quality. It integrates into our occupational health and safety. And it's one of these support standards. And I will say this, that it is a guideline. So please understand it's not a standard for which you can be certified. It is a guideline. It is one of the support standards. And there are many, many, many support standards that have been written. If you just look at the back of your 9,000, you look at the back in the bibliography of your 14 or your 45, or you go into any of the others, 50,000, you will find many other support guidelines that have been written to help you have better efficiency and effects out of using those standards in your business. So our first principle is accountability. What are your impacts, your own impacts on society, the people you employ, the people that you affect with your activities? What happens to the economy? You are spending money, you are using money, you are utilizing other industries, other suppliers that are involved. You have a microcosm or a microeconomy around your business, but you can also affect the wider economy. In doing that, how do you have an impact and engage with the environment? What are the environmental factors for which you are accountable as an organization? Then we're looking at the concept of transparency in your procurement decisions. Now, that means that you're being open. It means you're being fair. It means you're being true. It means you are saying to people, we want to procure items, services, which have got environmental concerns at their forefront and are breaking ground, innovating perhaps in the area of making sure that we have a better use of materials on the input side to all the activities we're looking at. And I want to just stress that. The inputs to activities that you're doing that have been thought through in advance from the perspective of being environmentally friendly. Okay? And of course, we're going to be dealing with our supply chain to do that. We want ethical behavior. So to get the transparency, if we don't have ethical behavior by our supply chains, they make claims that they are providing you products that have come from a recycled background, or this much of hemp and this much of natural fibers are being used in the products. The question is, are they? Do we have that ethical behavior? Do we have that openness and transparency that we get truthful information from the supply chain related to our procurement decisions and meeting our requirements? We also want to see that there's a full and fair opportunity for all people to compete. We don't want to have bias and prejudice against forms of suppliers, but at the same time, we're trying to encourage those suppliers to come on board with better ideas, better packaging, better delivery, lower energy inputs, less resource costs. We're looking at the life cycle of products, and we're saying, if you've got good ideas, bring them to the table. We're not going to prejudice you because you're a small company, or we're not going to give a bias because you're a large organization, and we would favor that in terms of the way we do business. We want to have respect for our stakeholder interests. Naturally, all directors of companies are trying to address and look after stakeholder interests. And yet today, the current narrative is shifting slowly over to what is your environmental footprint? How are you managing your carbon interests? What are you dealing with your energy areas? Can you show us that you've got a 14,000 system that's working? And now we go to the next level. Can you show us that you have got processes in place to respect the environment, and where the money of the stakeholders being used, that you protect his reputation by making the right procurement decisions? We want you naturally to have respect for the rule of law. That goes without saying, but you know what? Sometimes we do need to say it. And that compliance needs to be along the supply chain. As an internationally registered lead auditor, naturally, this is one of the things I'm always looking for, is to see, did you evaluate your suppliers, and did you evaluate their ability to make correct purchasing decisions that favor your requirements for supply to you, all the way down your supply chain? And when I say all the way, I'm even saying to people, and if you look at the 14,000 standard, it requires you to have considered the life cycle of the product from its origination all the way through to its elimination and disposal at the final end of its life. Well, the rule of law is going to be found all the way along, and we want to make sure the supply chain complies to those. Then we want the respect for human rights. These are part of the UN Sustainable Goals. These are part of the UN Sustainable Goals. All right. So we're looking at the human rights that are there. Now, that means that you should have an idea whether the suppliers that you're using are making use of child labor. And social audits, which started a number of years ago, and I was audited by Coca-Cola on a social audit basis, where they were trying to examine whether there are any forms of child labor being used, whether our workers had proper contracts, and whether they had proper facilities and were treated with dignity and respect. These are what organizations are looking for today. They're part of our long-term sustainable goals, and we need to understand our supply chain has got the respect for human rights all the way through. Then innovative solutions. You know, in just talking with the class I'm working with right now, where we're dealing with health and safety management systems, I said to them, when it comes to making decisions, do you buy just based on price, or do you look back and say, have we got, let's say, packaging that's in plastic versus packaging that's in a can, or packaging that's in glass or steel? And then we take a look and see which of these is renewable, which of these can we reuse, which of these can we recycle, what are the innovative solutions that we can begin to look for. Now, if you as an organization begin to make demands for innovative solutions on your suppliers, then when the process is finished, the type of waste outcomes that you have are going to be better for the organization commercially. Because if you can recycle your waste, so in the industrial chemical sector, we bring in drums from overseas with industrial chemicals, we manufacturing products, now we have empty drums. We found a way to sell those drums to an organization that needed drums of good quality that could then be cleaned out, repainted, put a epoxy lining inside, have a plastic bag inserted. It was a plastic bag, unfortunately, but now we can have export of South African fruit juice because there was a shortage of drums locally, but we then recycled our drums into an export market. That's the kind of innovative solutions we want to look for. Then, of course, focusing on the needs. We need to seek alternatives to materials we use, to methods we have, to machines we make use of, to processes that people are involved in. What are the different ways we can do things that we can make sustainable procurement decisions around and then see benefits to the organization? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be absolutely clear with you. My mantra is always, if you're not making money doing this, why are you even doing it? We need to look at that. Integration is natural going into all the procurement practices. So not just your buyers in your purchasing department, but procurement practices include the decisions around the technical side, the decisions around the materials that are going to be used, the technical people who guide the procurement practice. It's not just the buyer's role to make sure that we've done a sustainable process to procurement. That is a collective effort within the organization and should be integrated all the way through the organization to make those kind of decisions. So do you buy a bunch of pens for a conference that have got a plastic barrel, or you can buy pens that have got a cardboard barrel, which is recyclable, reclaimed material? Simple decisions that we can make. The analysis of all costs. Money is going to be a factor, no matter what we say in business today. There will always be life cycle cost benefits that we need to look for, and that takes us into an analysis. Yes, some of these innovative packaging concepts and new ideas might cost you more money at the outset. But when you look at the recyclability of the material and the reduction in waste that you may have coming out of your system, because you can sell out some of the packaging and other elements that arise, you've got a return into your life cycle cost. And that's when you can make the business case to top management for bringing in sustainable procurement. And lastly, continuous improvement. Nothing is static in business. We have so many voices calling this way and that way in life about how to improve here and how to do things better there. Go and do the research. Go and ask your suppliers. Go and talk to your customers. Go and find out what are the sort of things that they need. What are the things that are bugging them? Is the way you deliver items to them with packaging creating a waste problem for them? Go back in, see whether you can do something better in that respect. Look at product preservation, look at services you deliver, look at materials you consume. There's continuous improvement opportunities everywhere that we look. And in closing, the connection of this guideline standard to ISO 14000's environmental management systems is absolutely unmistakable. You could also look at Responsible Care 14001, which is a very interesting standard that has taken the chemical industry responsible care management practice program and incorporated that program into 14001. I'm not aware of any users in South Africa that are using RC 14001, but I have encountered that in the Middle East. And so that is some of the factors that we look at. When we take responsible care of the inputs that we buy or we procure, then the outputs must improve, which is the value proposition I'm making to you today, while the wastes will decrease. And of course, that means your costs of operations will decrease. So my final word is that sustainable procurement is, for me, and I hopefully for you today, a revelation of a hidden advantage that everybody should want to uncover in their business. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you today.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That was the man who's responsible for training and developing the next generation of ERCA certificated auditors, Mr. John Bruce Mills. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we are nearing the end of the event. So thank you everybody for your attention. We are going to look at the next session, which is about education and upskilling. This one is closer to my heart because I'm trying to start a business, you know. I think a business recycling discarded chewing gum will work. I'll hear the speakers will have to guide me on that. What I need now is just help getting it off the ground, you know. The next speaker is the Deputy HOD and Senior Lecturer in the Department of Geography, Environmental Management and Energy Studies at UJ. She's been at the University of Johannesburg for the past 7 years, and prior to that, she gained experience in environmental consulting at GCS Pty Ltd. She currently lectures environmental management at second year, third year, and honors level, with a few classes also at master's level. Her main research focus is water resource management, and she's passionate about providing students with practical hands-on experience and training in various aspects of environmental management. I present to you Dr. Leanne Modley. Leanne, over to you.
Thank you so much, Letabo. I'm so honored to be here and hearing all the previous presentations in all these specialist fields. I'm really, really honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So as Letabo said, I'm from the University of Johannesburg in the Department of Geography, Environmental Management and Energy Studies. But we focus on environmental management. So there's 3 of us in that space, if I can call it that, or unit. And what we do in our department is we make it one of our main goals to expose our students to practical aspects of the theoretical work we do in classes. So since both our degrees, the environmental management at 3rd year level and the environmental management at master's level is professional degrees, what we try and do is provide the students with as many skills as possible while doing their degrees. So before COVID, how this happened was we would have our undergraduate students join our colleagues in consulting industry for a day to just gain some skills, see how things happen. You know, obviously not much can be done in a day, but at least they provided them with some overview of what a day would look like in consulting. So they would go to different consulting companies. They would do a few tasks with them. They would see how things work in the consulting industry. And obviously then COVID came and all of that had to be stopped. So in 2020, we still tried hard to give our students these practical skills. So how we did this with COVID was through live sessions. So we would have live sessions in our practical sessions with colleagues from industries, different industries. So we'd have from the Waste Management Institute. So we had Mpendulo come and speak to our students, our third year students, and Winnie also from Mintech come and speak to our students. We expose them to different areas, different sectors, so that they don't just see environmental management as just a consulting job. So they look at different aspects such as waste, water, air quality, and even finance. At the master's level, it's a bit more applied. So our environmental management master's is more of a tutored master's where the students would do 1 year of lectures, which is also mixed a little bit with guest lecturers, but it's a very hands-on course because we also have your tours and your field trips in there. It's sometimes very difficult, especially because of funding and mainly because there's problems with access because many companies don't really want students on site. So those are some of the challenges that we face. But the department is doing really exciting research in terms of waste management. I just thought I'd share a bit of our projects with you. So most of our students doing our tutored masters are working students, so it's easier for them to choose their research topics because they will usually come with problems or issues that they've already identified in the workspace or at their workplace. And we'll then draft it into a research proposal and then conduct the research thereon. So some of the exciting projects that we're working on include lifecycle sustainability assessments at the university. We also have many subjects, many topics focusing on perceptions, household awareness, especially in Johannesburg, some in the rest of South Africa, and some even in Nigeria. And then we have some students focusing on the perceptions of waste management strategies in South Africa and in Nigeria. We have students also focusing on how to produce energy from waste. We have, I think we've had quite a few studies also on pharmaceutical waste generation and the management thereof. And we have students now working on waste disposal and generation during COVID-19. And then we have some students also working on EIAs and waste management in that sector. So we do have many exciting projects, and what we are trying to do is obviously fill research gaps and sometimes provide solutions to problems that hasn't even been identified yet. So I think being on this platform to share what we're doing at the university and also just a call to everyone on, all our panelists, if you would like to collaborate, if you would like to co-supervise, if you have any issues you would like us to work together on, formulate a research question, research proposal, and take it further at the University of Johannesburg in our department. We are fully open to that. And if you can provide us also with, like I said, practical sessions where you speak to our students and provide them with practical skills, we are also fully open to that because we are trying to train leaders and make it easier for their employers when they employ them, because they won't just have theoretical knowledge on the topic, but also some practical skills, which we are hoping to gain from everyone who's in industry. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I didn't prepare a presentation. I thought I'd just speak about it generally. But yes, I'm open to any questions, and thank you once again for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Motley. I'm certain you will get people contacting you from this event about what you were talking about. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation. I'm not seeing any questions directed at you at this point from the chat, but we'll certainly forward those questions to you, or any comments and anything that is directed to you at a later stage. Thank you very much. The fourth industrial revolution is transforming the way we live, and it's transforming the way we work. It is said that 5 years from now, and maybe sooner, 35% of skills that are considered important in today's workforce will have changed. So we have in our midst someone who can explain this technological revolution that is indeed evolving at an exponential pace. She obtained a master's in engineering management at the University of Johannesburg just last year. She has experience in systems engineering, and as part of the qualification, the research was about the fourth industrial revolution and the skills shortages and mismatches that exist within the engineering space. Welcome to Ms. Linde Loadlomo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you also for inviting me to speak today. I gained a lot of knowledge and insight into what MinTech does and how environmental studies and recycling. So that was very interesting for me. Thank you so much. I was just asked to speak about how the fourth industrial revolution will affect jobs as we know them within the engineering space, which is my specialty, but also generally everyone has been affected, everyone will be affected. Most jobs will become, according to research, most jobs will become obsolete. So we don't really want to get to a space where people lose job. We want to avoid churn and misplaced people, especially in South Africa, where already we experience a very high unemployment numbers. So I think the studies that most South African researchers, myself included, have done or are trying to do is to try and find how we can meet this need, you know, where it exists the most, which is in our case, you know, like transforming how we do things into more sustainable ways of doing things. So the most thing that I wanted to discuss today was how manufacturing, which is, I'm thinking recycling is a part of a manufacturing of some sort, can be done to meet the drivers of the revolution, like integrated systems, where we speak of standards, where we speak of quality control, where we're speaking of how machines how we will need to integrate with machines so that we do things in a more streamlined, more sustainable, more better way, for lack of a better word. I suppose it will be better for us to work in a certain way, but also we'll have more outputs, we'll have higher outputs in terms of what we are trying to achieve. So when we look at data analysis and data science, those are 4IR drivers that we are aware of, that can be used in a situation where we're recycling or when manufacturing products, where we're tracing products, where we can test products as in a part of a QA session, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done by machines. We as people need to then upskill ourselves. We need to see the gaps that exist within our environments and say, how can we improve current skills so that we don't find ourselves misaligned or misplaced within the industries that we are in currently. So I think one of the biggest things that I got from the discussion was how, you know, you monitor your standards, you monitor products, you monitor, and you have to know how products were made and how we would need to recycle them. So that goes, for me, it speaks to integrated systems, because in an integrated system, for an example, if we start thinking system-wide, we would look at how a product starts from start to finish. We're able to trace those products. So those things are part of the revolution that we're in, and how systems have moved from being scattered, and this person does this part of the process, this person just does this part of the process. Processes would be integrated. Processes can be traced. You can trace the processes. So if I'm trying in this discussion to avoid being too technical and too engineering about how I see things or how engineers get to see things. But from where we are in terms of this discussion, I think most importantly would be just to see where gaps exist within our environments, and how we can use the technology, how we can use the soft drivers of the technologies like your systems thinking and your data analysis to develop and improve our systems. And then as a result of the improved and sustained systems, we can get higher outputs, we can get lower employee churn. So we keep the people we have skilled them to meet the gaps that we would have identified as an industry, to say, to make this most efficient, what do we need to do? Who do we need to skill, and how would we need to upskill them to get them to the levels that we need to get to? I think my discussion is quite short, and maybe I ran through it, but I think that would be my input into as we are educating the people that are coming below us, and as we are certifying them, and as we are moving new people into the industry, we need to have these drivers that of the evolution that we're going into as a standpoint, to say everyone who comes out of here needs to have a way of thinking of where systems are efficient, of where systems can be traced, where we can store data, the data we have, how do we use it to improve and constantly improve our systems, and constantly trace products and trace product cycles as well, because I heard that as part of a recycling. So I think from where we are, every revolution comes with a lot of changes, and those changes not only affect technology, but they'll affect everyone in the world. So it's important for every industry to start looking at how do we use this revolution, and as Africans, as South Africans, how do we don't allow it to then harm us more, in the human element, in the softer skills. How do we ensure that people still have work? How do we meet the need by improving ourselves, by not necessarily only by just going to school, but there's a lot of ways where our industries can be revolutionized by how we look at it and how we educate ourselves about the drivers and about meeting those needs. So the paper that I was working on with my supervisors, obviously, we want to have a framework in which that can be used in any industry, in any company, to say, what do we have in terms of skills? Where are we trying to get to? Where are our gaps? So the framework we have developed, which I'm hoping to then implement as I proceed with my studies as well, is to say, each company, any industry can look at this template, this framework, and see what do they need to input, what type of people do they have currently, and where do they need to see those people for that company to have lower employee churn, but higher productivity in terms of the timelines, less human errors. A lot of layers that come, or benefits that come, but we as South Africans, if we want to get those benefits, we can't lose focus on the people, which is people are what we need. We need people to constantly have jobs. We need people to constantly be skilling themselves and upskilling themselves. If you are interested, I can share the framework, and any company, doesn't matter the size of the company, can use the framework to see where they are with themselves, and try and partner with institutions that offer training, or universities as well, to see where they can get the correct skills and how they can implement those skills once they've gotten them in their industries, and then monitor from start to finish the benefits that they've seen, or the productivity levels, or just, you know, softer skills, how the people have changed their way of thinking, how the people have changed the way in which they do things, so that when we are full on in the fourth revolution, we are ready, we are highly skilled, both technical skills and the softer skills that we need for everyday work life. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dinangwe. That was very, very informative. Siyabonga.
Thanks.
Okay, our last but not least, Bare Mojamura Khuti Khosi, and I don't know what that is in English, so I'm not going to translate. But we have a life and business coach amongst us with human resource experience spanning over 22 years. He gained experience in the public sector, manufacturing, petrochemical, and FMCG industries. He worked in multinational organizations and gained experience that enhanced his leadership role as an astute HR executive. As a result of this exposure, he solidified his skills in strategic thinking. We all could use that. Business acumen, talent management, leadership development, facilitation, and change management processes. Currently, he runs and manages a life and business coaching company called Dreams Made Possible, Pty Ltd. He got a breakthrough early in his career to apply his coaching skills when he was selected as part of the group of specialists to be coached by Stephen Drotter to roll out the Drotter leadership methodology across Sasol group of companies. This changed his approach to leadership development. He continued to apply his newly acquired skills as a facilitator of personal insights and leadership development workshops during culture change processes at Sasol. And then he joined Nestle. And in May 2011, he was in Dubai with other colleagues across the region to be trained on everyday coaching program predicated on the GROW model. Maybe he will tell us more about that. And then he continued to impact leaders in his role as HR regional leader in Cummins. It is at that point, at around 2015, when he took on a formal coaching program with Inner Life Skills Coaching Academy, where he was certified as a life and business coach. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Butaki Tex Lalele, and he will tell you more about his CV if he has time to. It's rather a lengthy CV. But welcome, Tex, and thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Letabo. I hope you can hear me, and thanks for the introduction.
We can hear you, and we can also see you, Tex.
Okay, pleasure. I'm trying to share, but it seems like maybe I've got the same challenge that Bruce had, which is not a challenge for me to continue without the presentation, but if we can sort it, then it's still okay. Let me see. Do I have the sharing capability there?
You should, Tex. I really don't know how the others are able to share and others are not able to, but.
Yeah, I had two screens. I disabled the other screen because I thought that might be the challenge. But let's get to the chase. Thank you, colleagues, and thanks to the panelists for sharing their nuggets. And I think what I have been requested to share was to talk about learning organizations, especially in the context of this changing external environment and the need to achieve the sustainable development goals. And I think the aspect that we are discussing today, which is the Global Recycling Day, fits squarely into the broader sustainable development goals that we know are coordinated and driven from the United Nations point of view. So maybe as just to start the conversation around learning organizations and their role in ensuring that the sustainable development goals see the light of day. It might be crucial to just start by giving the context of these goals. And the context is that we have 17 elements that are aimed at transforming the world as per the United Nations. And that stems from elements of poverty, zero hunger, wellness, up to even matters that deals with sustainable cities and communities. But the idea behind this element is about creating a blueprint that will assist in achieving a sustainable future for all, and all means globally. And it is also about magnifying the issues that are affecting people across the globe on a daily basis. But most importantly, the drive behind these 17 elements is about, 16 actually, is about establishing that common language in addressing the people challenges across the globe. So the reason why I'm saying 16 is because the 17th element is about partnership and collaboration to ensure that there's interconnectedness and harmony in building social inclusion, economic growth, as well as environmental protection across the world. So when you look at those 17 elements, you can group them into those 3 elements of social inclusion, economic growth, and environmental protection, with a view to ensure that we've got sustainable future for generations that are to come. Because the context of even this discussion around Global Recycling Day is about what is it that we do today so that the current future generations are able to have something that they can work on and remain sustainable for the foreseeable future. So with that context, organizations have got a critical role to play, and the element that talks directly or that is key to organizations here is about the 4th goal, which is about quality education. And it simply means ensuring inclusive and quality education for all and promoting lifelong learning to ensure that we become sustainable as individuals, as entities, but larger as nations, but more importantly as continents and as the globe. And there are 3 interdependent factors in this process of ensuring that the sustainable goal, development goal number 4, which is quality education, sees the light of day. And that is the element of us becoming learning organizations. Related to that is promoting professional development. And the 3rd element is ensuring sustainable development, which is the main theme actually behind the sustainable development goals. And what do we mean really by learning organizations? It is mainly about creating organizations that are creating, acquiring, and transferring knowledge for impact that is greater than themselves. So you need organizations that are able to acquire the knowledge and develop the practical abilities and offer realistic solutions to the pressing problems that we are experiencing today, as encapsulated within those 17 elements of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the second part of that is professional development. You know, behind everything that we do, there are individuals. So even learning organizations, they are driven by individuals. For those learning organizations to succeed, we need people who are going to develop themselves professionally, both at a formal level, but also at an informal level, to ensure that, because professional development leads to sustainable development. The more people acquire the knowledge, they acquire the skills, the competencies, the more effective they become, the more efficient they become, and the more productive they become. But most importantly, the more employable they become, and they also increase their chances of being able to earn reasonable income so that we can deal with issues of poverty, but also we can start to get ideas and good ways of interacting with each other, interacting with the environment, and all the other elements that are going to lead us to a sustainable future. And the 3rd element, which is sustainable development, also enables professional development. So that's what I'm saying. All those 3 elements act like covariates, and they influence each other, all moving in the same direction to ensure that we get to that sustainable future that we are talking about. But then, what is that specific or practical role that organizations play in order to get to sustainable development goals? And I like to term it building organizational capabilities for sustainable development. And there are at least 6 steps that I would like to share with you at a higher level, at a faster pace, given that we are challenged for time. What organizations like MinTech and all other organizations are challenged with to be able to deal with elements of recycling, for example, as we're talking, zooming into that, but broadly going into sustainable development goals, it's about aligning our strategic priorities to the SDGs. And it's about, when we look at our strategies, we start to look at 4 key areas around health, around environment, around the economy, and around human rights. And when Bruce Mills was talking about the strategic procurement, he already touched on that to say this is not necessarily purely a procurement perspective, but is to say within the broader context of how we do procurement, how are we affecting other elements that are also critical, because organizations need to start, if they were to become learning organizations, to start to think in the most systemic way. To see that parts interact with each other, that one part is part of a bigger whole. And once we start to look at our strategic priorities in that way, we start to impact the strategic development initiatives. I spoke about health, environment, economy, as well as human rights. Let's just pick one element. In the strategic priorities of organizations, we'll have to look at, for example, if I were to pick health, at how mental health or health in its broader sense contribute towards the productivity and the sustainability that we want to talk about. Organizations need to now respond to the call by the World Health Organizations to say mental health, for example, takes away 1 trillion annually as a result of lost productivity. So those are certain things that we need to start to adjust to. How much of money, time, and other factors are lost into the waste if we don't look at our environments? And I'll give some examples as we go down. So yes, the first part is the strategic priorities. The second part to build these learning organizations is about identifying the competences and aligning those to business as well as the sustainable development goals. So gone are the days when the organizations will just have to look at their strategies and their small niche, but is to now look at it broadly. You know, some people can argue that, but we have already taken that step, which is true, in the form of corporate social responsibilities or even creating shared value. Some organizations have gone beyond that to creating shared value. Some have even gone beyond creating shared value towards creating impact. But then in order for us to do that is to identify the competencies that we can align to the SDGs, but also develop the training and delivery solutions for our leaders. And in those curriculums, like Lee Ann has said, much as she was talking from an IR perspective, but I think from an educational perspective, is to look at our leadership and management development programs if we were to reach all these things that we are talking about. What type of ethos and values are we going to adapt as a leadership cohort within organizations? Because those ethos and values, they drive the strategic decisions that should go beyond the narrow focus on profits and start to look at the 17 elements of the SDGs that we spoke about. How do we deal with diversity and inclusion in our leadership and management processes? How do we deal with the issue of digitization? I think Lindell has spoken about the 4IR in that space. And probably that's not maybe something that I can get much into, but those are certain things that we need to bring into the fold if we are going to drive sustainable development goals. And lastly, around leadership and management development is about how do we build efficiencies? If I were just to pick up the element of zone on the element of waste, there are a lot of waste that goes into organizations because of duplication, because of rework, because, for example, of equipment failures, minor stoppages that are happening within our environments, or even lack of instructions, or even futile meetings that are going on and on and on. So it's about how do we develop this so that we become efficient and effective, so that we boost the economic element that we spoke about, the environmental protection, but also the social inclusion that we spoke about. And now the other elements as part of this learning organization is developing the skills development programs for all employees and encouraging self-learning. So one of the key questions that the organizers of this session wanted us to respond to was that, then how do us as individuals, what steps do we need to take to be able to move our careers in the context of building these learning organizations? And this does not happen in isolation, only looking at individuals. Hence, I started with learning organizations. But as individuals, we need to focus on professional development, which is both formal and informal learning, and ensuring that we adopt a continuous learning approach, meaning that we need to have goals, understand how we live as a society, as a human race, and then start to adapt what we call the transformative learning approach to our lives, which simply means that how do we significantly challenge aspects of our worldviews, our assumptions, our belief systems, so that we can start to incorporate these 17 elements. Just to pick one example, our views around gender equality are so critical to build a society where we can all be saying that we are global citizens and we can all together do these things that we are supposed to do. So the last part there is that organizations need to start to evaluate, plan, and look for the future. So in a nutshell, before I go to the last slide, it's about aligning strategic priorities, identifying the competences, coming up with training delivery solutions, developing the skills program for employees, encouraging self-learning or fostering self-learning within organizations. And then we evaluate, we plan, we do, and continuously refine our strategies towards becoming learning organizations with the end goal of achieving the sustainable development goals. And in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that from an organizational standpoint of view, if we want to become learning organizations, we need to improve the skills of our employees, of our citizens as well, by encouraging access to higher education, to vocational training, and even entrepreneurial skills. Because we'll be dealing with the first goal, for example, of dealing with poverty, and the fourth goal of education. And then we need to build transformative and servant leadership at all levels. The world will progress, organization will progress only if we start to develop leadership, and leadership that is transformative and that believes in serving those that they lead. And the second last point is about promoting organizational climate that will benefit everyone, and then encouraging partnerships and collaboration, both internally and external to the organization, so that we can get to the goals that we need to achieve in the longer run, and build sustainable futures for the current generation, but also for the generations that are yet to come. Where I am, I'm already thinking about my children's children, because once we start to think long term, we will be able to influence how we do things today, and not only think from the immediate term. Thank you, Letabo. I hope that I have answered the question.
Thank you very much, Tex. You certainly did. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Butaki Tex Tlalele. I would like to express my appreciation to all the participants for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend our event, to all our panelists for the fruitful discussions, for sharing your thoughts, for sharing your experiences with us. I hope this event has helped you, if anything, with establishing useful connections, obviously. But more than that, I hope that together we found new ways of thinking, especially about what we throw away, that we all see not waste from this point forward, but opportunities to give back to Mother Earth her natural resources, and thereby save the future of our planet and humanity. I'm also thinking about my children's children here, Tex. So thank you all for your attention. I'm not sure if Mpendulo is still here. Sisi, if you are here, would you like to please come and close? Okay, it doesn't look like Mpendula is here. So on that note, we apologize for running over the time that we had specified initially. And Bonginkosi, we note your chat on the site. He says it was a very good event, and he feels that this must be amplified. Thank you very much for those wonderful words. And we will definitely share contact details like Yuli Jason has asked of our panelists if you want to get in touch with them. So we will ask our communications team to do that. And with that said, thank you all for your attention. This was definitely informative. Hopefully we can convince you guys to do it again. I'm game, but I don't know about the panelists. That was very informative. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Letabo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Letabo.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Great,
Dr.
thanks very
Motley.
much.
Thank you, Mr.
Enjoyed
Landu.
it and very informative, and hopefully recorded, and we look forward to some outputs from the meeting.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
This is offline. Now we are saying well done offline. Hey, no, this is offline, yo.